All right, folks, welcome everybody once again to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with Jamie Uyeyama, and we got Greg Flamong, who is producing the show. Will probably come on and add some comments now and again as well. Before we get going, I wanted to mention once again, it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page of Irish Sports Daily, click on the premium section, sign up today. There's lots going on right now with recruiting. There's tons going on with spring football, and the Yama will be there starting tomorrow, and we'll have hopefully some good stuff happening here, and so looking forward to all the stuff that's happening here this week. There's certainly lots of big time recruits coming in this weekend as well, Jamie, and I'm telling you, man, things are starting to turn in recruiting. It's looking really, really good. We're going to get to some of that here a little bit later. Also, before we wanted to get going, I wanted to mention our first sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing. ESQ has been making the best handmade custom suits, sport coats, tuxedos, and shirts for the last decade, and has been featured on GQ, ESPN, USA Today, and you've seen them dressing your favorite players and coaches. ESQ only gets the best fabric from Italy and England's top mills. With over 40,000 fabrics to choose from, you're guaranteed to look your best. Go visit esqclothing.com and book your appointment. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. Also wanted to mention, I heard it's the Ge's birthday today. So happy birthday to Ge. Yeah, he's out there. I don't want to give away his age, but I'll tell you what, he looks a lot better at his age than I did at that age. I know that. So, guy's a sharp-looking dude, man. Sharp-looking dude. So I actually saw something. He was like named one of the best dressed in Chicago too. So, you know, when you own a clothing store, that probably.
I mean, I hope so. The guy's got the
best, yeah.
Yeah, guy's making his own suits. So he's the man.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to get into a lot of things today. I think we're going to kind of go back to what we were doing, Jamie, which is kind of going down the roster, talking about spring. And, you know, a lot of people want to know about the portal when it opens, what's going to happen, all those types of things. And we talked about running back and quarterback last week. We'll get to wide receivers, tight ends, and potentially offensive line today. Let's start with wide receiver. And I think the first thing is, you know, Micah Gilbert is out right now. And I think that's kind of a blow, Jamie, because they really need somebody to kind of step into that boundary besides Malachi Fields, you know, who will come in the summer. But right now, there's just really not a lot of boundary receivers because he's banged up. And so a guy like Jerome Bettis Jr. gets a really good look. And so for guys, I mean, if you think about, enrolling early, if you're Elijah Burress and you're Scrap Richardson and Jerome Bettis Jr., this has been a really good opportunity for those guys to get a ton of reps because, you know, Jordan Faison, because of the lacrosse schedule, he isn't as active, although I think he's more active this spring than he was last spring. But, you know, certainly there's some opportunities there. Right now you got Greathouse, you got KK Smith, Burress, Cam Williams, Logan Saldate, Scrap Richardson, and Jerome Bettis Jr., and that's it, Jamie. That's it for all the wide receivers. And, man, if you are a young receiver right now, you are getting just – you couldn't ask for a better situation than what these freshman receivers are. And let's be honest, Notre Dame's very fortunate that all three are there. Part of the probably the biggest part of freshman receiver is just learning routes, learning coverages, learning what you're supposed to do. And you don't really get that. It's not as easy just standing behind and watching somebody else do it. It's something completely different when you have the opportunity to go out there and play and compete. And so these guys, this is going to really help them in their ability to kind of progress at a faster pace than really what a lot of freshmen would have opportunities for. Your thoughts here?
Oh, I mean, it's huge. And I think you look back to, a couple of years ago with a guy like Jaden Greathouse, coming in early. And, obviously he benefited greatly from that. I think there's one of those things where it's not just learning the playbook and learning, becoming a better route runner, all of those things. It's getting used to like the physicality of the DBs that you're going against compared to what you saw in high school, like the speed of the game, the precision that you have to run routes that like this, you got to get at this, depth when you're trying to, run this route because everything's got to kind of fit into the thing. And, you want to make those mistakes obviously in the spring rather than the fall. And I think a lot of those times too, when they're going into team, you're not going to get the perfect rep from those guys there. But that's something hopefully when you're thinking about like, Cam Williams, Logan Saldate, obviously, you said Gilbert's banged up, but still for like guys like Gilbert was the guy who was ahead of the curve, last year in a lot of ways. But for Saldate, who came in last summer, and Williams, who's obviously that was like his biggest thing, like, man, this is a massive opportunity for him. Like, we should be coming out of the spring and hearing about Cam Williams that he is going to be a factor this year, like based on the opportunity that he's gotten this spring, right? Because he's already been on campus for a year. He spent obviously a lot of time like learning and working. And if he's put in all the work and he's done it, and obviously, everyone knows what an exceptional athlete he is, he should be a guy who really gets a chance to step up. And, you mentioned about the boundary. I mean, he's one of those guys that if they do want to give him a look at the boundary, I mean, he's 6'2", 200 pounds. Like he's big enough to play there. He certainly could get some reps there. Although, I think people think he's like a bit of a more natural fit to the field, but he's certainly big enough to play there and could, I certainly thought that was a possibility for him, coming out of high school, that he could be a boundary receiver too. So I'm really kind of excited to kind of see where he's at, because he's one of those guys that if he really makes a jump, that he could be a difference maker for the offense.
Let me ask you a question. If we don't hear that, are you concerned?
I am a bit. I don't think that, you want to say like, oh, it's never going to happen for him, because I think it's just too early, and I get that, but that means though that he needs to make a jump over the summer and heading into the fall, because it's just so easy to if he's not establishing himself where you're getting to the point where in the season where you're like, this is a guy that we trust he can play. That he might not be, wide receiver 1, maybe he's not even wide receiver 3, but like we trust he can put him in the game and he can play. We can throw him the ball, he can make a play. And if you're not at that point with him, there have been different guys who've had different, trajectories in terms of where their, careers have gone at receiver. But certainly, I just think with the opportunities that he's getting, he should be able to kind of take advantage and at least just get in the mix, right? Because you don't want to go out of the season and then all of a sudden, Malachi Fields is leaving, and then Will Pauling's leaving, and we'll see with Jay Greathouse. Maybe he has the kind of year where he's 3-0, right? Like that it's at least on the table that could happen, and you don't want to have a situation where you think like Gilbert's making the step, maybe Saldate's taking a step, maybe one of the freshmen taking a step, and you're just falling behind. And that is, it's hard to catch up. It's hard to catch up at that point.
Based on things I've heard, I've heard there has been progress there with him. So I don't think that's going to be an issue, but I agree. If we don't hear that, you're kind of like, oh, well, is this, not that it's never going to happen, but it should happen by now just because of the opportunities. But I've heard good things so far. So I think he's definitely on pace to do that. And so excited to see what happens with him. I think it's a big year for a guy like KK Smith. I been here a couple years, a little banged up his first year. Now he has an opportunity. And I think if you're going to make some noise, Jamie, KK Smith, this is kind of the year. This is where you want to see it. And so I don't know. I have heard lots of good things about him but just haven't seen it on the field yet. So I think if we don't hear something from him this spring and fall, he's a guy who could possibly be gone at some point too. But again, they need his speed. They need his ability to stretch the field, and he certainly brings that. It's just kind of crazy because they have a lot of guys that kind of fit the same mold, and him and Saldate and Faison and there's just a lot of those kind of guys that fit that same role. I suppose Scrap would be another of that type of player. And so I think we'll see what happens. Once this all unfolds. But I do think the loss of Gilbert, that's a bad thing. I was really hoping that we were going to hear a lot of great things about him because they really need him to step up this year. They need somebody who can come in and spell Malachi Fields now and again, and also become a playmaker. And I think he has the ability to do that, and he's shown that. He has the ability to get vertical. He has the ability to make plays. He uses his body really well when the ball's in the air. That's what I like about him. And that's why you can tell he's going to be a good boundary is he has the ability to kind of, use his elbows, use his body to kind of get some separation. And so we're hoping that that's what we see. But with him, with Gilbert, I do think that he's going to participate a little bit, but I don't think he's going to be able to catch balls and things like that. I think, it'll probably be more mental reps for him the rest of the way and physical running, that type of thing. And so, again, I just think it's a wonderful opportunity for guys like Scrap Richardson who needs to learn, and it sounds like he's probably got to get with the jugs machine a little bit and learn how to catch the ball, learn how to actually receive the ball. It's one thing to catch the ball, but it's another how to actually receive the ball. And, that's a big thing to learn. And, we saw in the past, who was the kid from Missouri that we thought had a chance in a similar situation. The guy played quarterback and was out the door pretty quick.
From Missouri.
Yeah, he was a quarterback, played wide receiver. Kendall Abdul-Rahman.
He's Kendall. He was from Illinois.
From Illinois.
Illinois. I thought he was from Missouri. Okay.
Yeah, but he's a perfect example because if you look at him, and especially I was super high on him as an athlete because he's a
great athlete. Yeah,
he's scored probably 7 70-yard touchdowns as a runner, as a runner as a quarterback, and you could just see explosiveness in it, but. Obviously, you got to be able to adjust and do all these things to become a receiver. It's not just, it's not as simple as just being hey, you run fast and you're going to get open. No, there's so many other parts of it. That's why it's not just a given. That's why you see some of these 5-stars bust, right? Because some of these guys are 5-stars because they're just freak athletes and it never happens for them. It is something where, yeah, you do want to take, these guys, you don't want to miss out on a great athlete, but they have to put in the work to really, really develop as receivers. And for some guys, it's more natural than others, right? Because there's obviously, you've seen, there's some guys who go play quarterback in college and then go into the NFL and then they become great players, become great receivers. Yeah. And then, I think of Anquan Bolden was a quarterback, right? And then he obviously, he was about as complete a receiver as you could get, for his entire
career. One of your boys.
Another guy. Yeah. So perfect example. And that's the kind of guy you thought maybe that Kendall Abdul-Rahman could be, but it never happened for him. You got to, expectations should be low early for Scrap Richardson, but I certainly Greg and I were talking about it last week. I like him and Burris when you watch them run and you just see them get in and out of their breaks. You just see exactly the potential there, right? Yeah. Of just both those guys are just really smooth athletes that you could see them developing into great players.
Excited to see it. I really am. And, hopefully we'll get to see a lot of them in the spring game as well. And they're going to have a great opportunity. And then you switch it over to tight end and you want to talk about a great opportunity. I wrote a story, on Sunday about Jack Larson. And obviously when you look at the situation, Kevin Bauman is back. Eli Rarinan has an opportunity, but Jack Larson, this is a big situation for him. And I think the other thing with Jack Larson is a lot of people thought maybe they'd get 2 tight ends last year. Not, they didn't. And when you look at the guy coming in, gosh, what is his name?
Flanagan?
Flanagan, yes. So when Flanagan coming in, you're looking at a situation where, like, for Larson, he's going to get so many reps, and probably reps that are very important to him in inline blocking and also being a blocker, because that's kind of the thing that he needs to work on. And my guess is the way things have, you'd say, okay, they're probably doing a lot of 11 personnel, but with guys out at wide receiver, it's kind of hard to do that too. It's kind of hard to do that. So you're not going to do a lot of 12 personnel with a couple tight ends. And so, are you getting a lot of 2-back stuff? It sounds like Jeremiah Love was working with wide receivers in the last practice we were able to see. So, maybe they're kind of going with that route a little bit too, putting Love out there, getting him, an opportunity. But for a guy like Eli Rarinan and a guy like Jack Larson, this is the opportunity that both really needed. And I thought it was interesting. I think, was it you that did the story on Eli? Jamie?
No, that was Matt. I did the one on Bauman. That was Matt.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. Interesting in reading Eli's kind of comments. And he's like, yeah, about halfway through, that's when I decided, hey, I got to turn this thing on. It's my time. I got to turn this on. And we did. We saw a much better player. And so I got to figure this spring he's going to take a big jump. But Jack Larson, I think people forget about Jack Larson because he's not 6'6" like Eli, right? But man, when you watch this guy, he is always open. He is always open. And we watched it in the spring game. He was always open. He's got very soft hands, a very good route runner. This, I'm not sure he's going to be Tommy Tremble, but he's kind of that type of player that you can move around and do a lot of things with. And then he just gets open constantly. And if you throw him the ball, he's catching it. So don't discount Jack Larson and what he can bring to the table. Once Cooper Flanagan gets back, is he going to play a lot? I don't know. But when you want to establish yourself, this is the year to do it for a guy like Jack Larson. And so, hopefully we'll hear a lot about him as well. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's a huge chance for him because I always look at it at tight end at Notre Dame. They recruit so well. They obviously identify so well and develop so well. And, Mike Denbrock obviously is a great tight ends coach. He's going to feature the tight end. Especially the more that they earn it, the more he's going to feature them. And I think that there's always something where, like, you want to be the next in line for which if Eli maybe didn't have that back half of the season, you might have said, well, wow, who's going to be tight end 1 here? Right. Like, we would have said that. But it just became obvious because of the way he blocked. Obviously, he made like a couple of big time plays there late in the season. But we also we knew his potential, but it had to just kind of be realized, and we're starting to see it, come to fruition at the end of last season. And Larson, if you look at it, because Eli's going to be gone after this year, and Larson, it is right there for him to be the tight end 1 in 2026. So, but in order for that to happen, he has to be, tight end 2 or something this year. Like, he has to be at least part of that where he's showing that he's ready to kind of take that kind of next step. Or else you get a guy like Flanagan coming in, who, I mean, I'm super high on. He's a great athlete, and I think gets after it like as a blocker too. Obviously his dad, everybody knows his dad, Jim, was just an unbelievable defensive tackle for Notre Dame, but he's got the same kind of attitude of like, he's a killer, right? Just the same mentality. So I think that's why Larson really needs to kind of like show that, not just as a receiver, because I think he is we're talking about the guys who have to come in and learn to be a receiver. He had that was one of the things I was so impressed with watching him in camp at Irish Invasion a few years ago. he's just a natural. Like
Yeah.
he just understands leverage, great hands, just natural, great body control. So he can be a weapon. Love to see that he got up to 250 pounds already, because that was going to be a question for him, right? People were like, well, he came in at like 220, 225. How big is he going to be? I mean, he's already put on 25 pounds. So obviously you want to see how he carries that, but love to see that obviously he's put in the work to get there. And because to me, that was like the biggest question for him, because I think he has, I thought his effort as a blocker when you were watching him as a recruit, and even watching him last year as he got kind of opportunities in the spring, he stood out. I was like, this guy's playing hard. Like he's getting after it. He's, swimming a bit because he's learning, but you could see like this guy wants to be great. And I just think the receiving aspect, like you mentioned, that part's going to come natural to him. So, I'm excited. I think if he, does what he, should with the reps that he gets, like he's got a chance to make an impact this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like you said, next year's probably the better opportunity, because once Flanagan comes back, he'll have a hard time unseating Cooper. Cooper's certainly earned a lot of, reps and respect and everything. And he also came on at the end of the year. I thought his blocking was a little bit better, probably not as good as Eli's. But I don't think anybody was blocking as good as Eli, even including Mitch Evans. Eli was just destroying people as a blocker. And so I expect it to be Eli. I expect it to be, Bauman some as an inline blocker for sure, because he's always been very solid with that. And then, probably some Cooper after that, and we'll see. All right, moving on to O-line. This is where it gets interesting. We've learned, boy, there was a big argument on the board about seeing Charles Jugasa at offensive guard. It's something that you and I expected for quite some time. It was interesting. You heard that Gerby Lambert was playing more right tackle. Styles Prescott more left tackle. I think we expected that, though. I think we expected them. That's where Styles was playing left tackle. You got Augustine playing left. You got Streebig playing right tackle. Sullivan Absher doing some snapping, also playing center and guard. And then, there's a whole bunch of guys that are kind of just there, and we're just not sure what to expect. So guys that I think, like a Devin Houston, we don't know much about. Chris Tarek, Joe Otting, those are some guys that we don't know a lot about, and whether, we'll see. Peter Jones is another. I think those four guys, this is a big spring for those guys. This is pecking order time for those guys. And if they don't, kind of establish themselves, they're probably not going to play moving forward, because there's just too many good players that have come in after them and are already making noise. And so I think for those four guys, Jamie, it's kind of now or never.
Yeah, I agree with that. But one thing I'll say is that because we've obviously seen it in other times where there seems to be not a lot on Notre Dame's offensive line, because they, usually do a pretty great job of, recruiting and finding the right guys there. But there's usually one or two guys that we see there and we're like, this guy's never going to play. Like I just don't see him being good enough at the level that you would have to be at Notre Dame. And I don't think I would say that sort of like Tarek is a perfect example, because obviously he's hurt right now. But I remember seeing him as a freshman and think, wow, this guy's got to lose a lot of weight. He's got to get in better shape. He's got to do a lot of work. And the jump from year 1 to year 2 for him was massive. And I was like, this guy might be able to play and be pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think he was going to start last year or anything, but you could see that he has got a chance. Right. And I think with all those guys, they all have a chance, right? I think that's a definite. And I mean, I certainly I know it's garbage time and some of that too, but I saw some reps from Joe Otting in garbage time where he looked really good. I was like, he looked impressive. So, but it's not out of the question that he could really have a great spring and take a jump. And then all of a sudden, you're talking about wow, he's someone who's really kind of put himself in a good position there. But at the same time, it's exactly this. The competition is so tight where all of a sudden, Cam Herring comes in as a freshman, and if Otting doesn't make a move, then all of a sudden you're like, well, Otting or Herring looks like he's got a chance to be the center of the future or whatnot, right? Like, so yeah. I think there's a lot of that, and I think with one thing that it was sticking out to me about Jagusa and about him playing, guard, and I think one of the things, we talked a little bit last week on Hidden Hustle too about, that he could be just great there. But the other thing is, know that he can play tackle. You know that he can play tackle, and you can move him out at any time. So you don't know about it, as much as we could say about Anthony Knapp and say, well, maybe he's a center or he could do this, whatever. It's like, well, he's not really fully practicing right now. So if he isn't really taking reps at center and they also see him as a left tackle, then why wouldn't you try to get, if we're trying to get the best 5, wouldn't you, and you don't want, and you think Anthony Knapp is one of your best 5, and you think Gerby Lambert could be one of your best 5, and he's definitely a tackle, right? Then yes, of course you'd, have Jagusa at guard because he could be an All-American at guard. Yeah, I mean, he might be an All-American at tackle too, but he went in. It's incredible what he did to go in the middle of that game after not having played all year. And like, he was like stoning Zane Durant, who's considered one of the best returning defensive tackles in the country. Like, he handled him. And I just think when you have someone like that who can do that, you don't want to mess with it unless you kind of have to. And I think they're in a good spot at tackle too. And like and we don't know too, if a Styles Prescott might actually, step up and be somebody who can actually be good enough to be like the next tackle or anything like that too. So, I really like how they've recruited there and how they develop. I think one of the things that we've kind of seen like steps with all these guys, and I just don't think there's just guys there that I think are like passengers that you're like, man, this guy's never going to make it. I just don't see it. I just think they have like a bunch of good options. Obviously, there's going to be a pecking order, like you said, and guys it's going to work itself out. Some guys are going to leave. That always happens, right? Just like Sam Pendleton, right? It happens, but you're not going to worry about guys leaving because they've done such a good job. Where I think a lot of where they're at this year, especially like the 2s, are going to be so much better than the 2s were last year.
Oh yeah, there's no question, and that's going to be the interesting part of it. And I think you make a good point in that Charles can do that, right? So if that's why you want to put Prescott out there, right? You want to see what Prescott can do, because if he could potentially be a starter at left tackle, and you always have Knapp that you could put out there, then you keep Charles inside. If Lambert's playing right at some point and then also plays some left, and you get a look there, and maybe he's the guy, then you keep Charles there. And so what you want to do is take a look at all these options, and then once fall rolls around, you'll make your decision then. Maybe they keep Knapp out there. Maybe they keep Knapp out there at left tackle. And it's funny because I saw a lot of guys just kind of, crapping on Knapp about, well, he's just not good enough. And it's like they forget what, Joe Alt was hardly a polished player as a true freshman. He really wasn't. And I will argue Knapp was a way better run blocker than Alt was as a true freshman.
He definitely was. Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. He was a way better run blocker. Now, does he have Alt's length? Does he have his quickness? Maybe not quite as much, but he's pretty solid. And it's kind of like a Liam Eichenberg. A lot of people thought he would be a big liability, and he went out there and performed pretty well. And Jamie jumped from true freshman to sophomore as an offensive lineman, especially an undersized offensive lineman.
There is no bigger jump.
Knowledge. Yeah. Oh, there is none. And so you have to expect Anthony Knapp's going to get a lot better this year as well, even if he is a left tackle. Notre Dame would be in a lot. I mean, they've been in a lot worse situation many times in trying to play a left tackle than having a guy like Anthony Knapp in the situation. So again, I think he's going to make a huge jump. If he's the guy, and he's been pretty good about it. But look, if you're going to run the football and you're going to take advantage of the types of running backs that you have, you need Charles inside. You need Charles absolutely dominating people in there. You got Billy, who's going to be, a good 330 at this point. And obviously Anthony Knapp's a good blocker. Whether it's Craig or at center or Knapp there or whoever, could be Absher, you never know. They're going to have good size up front. And if you have Charles there, and gosh, let me just say this. Just go watch him pull. Watch him pull in that Penn State game. My gosh. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And Jamie, for a guy who has not really played guard, right? Not really played guard before this, to come in and be that effective. I mean, how many times have we watched guards? It takes them 1.5 years, 2 years to be effective pullers. He's coming in there in the biggest game of his life and just destroying people, finding the right guy. It's just natural. The guy is an absolute natural player. Now, he could be a great left tackle. There's no question about it. But if you need to move real estate inside and you're going to be a running team because they're going to have to, and you're going to have protection up front for your quarterback because he's not going to be Riley Leonard, it makes a lot of sense to play Charles there. It really does. Thoughts?
Well, and I think it's funny because the same people who, would get upset about Charles Jegusah playing guard rather than tackle are the same people who are hoping that Gerby Lambert will start. Well, if Charles Jegusah is starting at tackle, then Gerby Lambert's not going to start at tackle because there's still Emil Wagner, right?
Yeah.
And I think I mean, Joe Rudolph even said too, they've thought at least about the possibility of moving Wagner to the left side. So we don't know how everything's gonna configure. But I'll tell you this, Mike. I don't watch normally, like, you see the videos of the early practice stuff. You don't get a lot out of it, right? Obviously, there's there's not a lot. Tell me there wasn't a tear in your eye seeing Gerby Lambert lining up next to Charles Jegusah and all that beef on that right side. I mean, good luck to anybody like that. So there's a lot of possibilities there of like what they could do. And obviously, like, Sullivan Absher's a big dude too, so they got a lot of options. Billy Schrouth is a big dude. Like,
I don't realize how big he is until you're standing next to Billy. Billy's a big dude, man.
Yeah,
he really
and
is.
Here's these two guys working together.
Look at that. Look how bigger Lambert is compared to Charles. And Charles
Jegusah is a massive dude. So
exactly, and Gerby
that says it all.
Huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So we kind of, when I look at the situation at offensive line, I mean, I think they're in such wonderful shape. Everybody knows offensive line is something I absolutely love. I love both D-line and O-line play because I think that's where you win football games. I think Notre Dame proved that again last year. And I think Michigan did the year before that. That's why they won the national championship. And so I'm a big fan of it. But Jimmy, I cannot remember a time where I felt more positive about Notre Dame's situation at offensive line than I do right now. I mean, they're stacked. They really are. The class coming in, we'll see how that all unfolds. The guys coming in, I like a lot of those guys. They're big dudes, they big, massive guys. But I do think it's important for them to get another tackle in this class. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But to me, O-line, I'm so excited about. They're going to be set for the next couple of years. They're going to be absolutely dominant. I will be shocked if they don't win the Moore Award here in the next couple of years. I really will. I'll be shocked if they don't. They have that much talent to easily do that. I will be very shocked if they don't win it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you can go back. I think the 2015 offensive line, obviously, like they had like three guys who were first round picks, and another guy was a second round pick, another guy who started 3 years. That was a pretty, for starting five, about as good as you can get. But you saw that after that 2015 year, when Stanley and Martin were gone, and then they had and Elmer was gone too. Mustafer stepped in and Barr stepped in, and those guys were obviously good players. But they didn't have the fifth spot was a problem for them that whole 2016 season.
Yeah.
Which is why they were never that great of a line, even though they had Nelson and McGlinchey back too. And that's why, when you got into it later, like Robert Hainsey had to play as a true freshman when he was as mentally ready, but not physically really ready to play at a high level. Speaking of guys who've made a big jump from, freshman to sophomore, he was one of them. So I just think that they're in way better spot just in terms of overall depth. And that's why too, when you look at them losing Spindler and them losing Coogan and Pendleton, that's why people don't bat an eye over it, because you just know the other guys they have in the pipeline. It is. They're in a very good spot.
Catastrophic,
It absolutely would have. And you know what? You got to tip your cap to Joe Rudolph, who's really done a really good job.
I had to chuckle. I read that Rocco had told the Nebraska team that they have more talent on that team than Notre Dame had last year.
I mean, come on, yeah.
I
know you know that's not true.
I know that's not true. So, but hey, you got to do what you got to do to try and lead.
Yeah, you're going in your new team.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny. All right, we're going to get to some questions. We got a lot of questions here. Not a lot, actually, surprisingly. But we'll also take some questions from the people in the chat. I saw there were some good questions there as well. All right, first question: who do you think has a higher floor upside, Bryce Young or Rodney Dunham? Oh man, don't make me choose between those two. I mean, I'd say it's probably about both. Although with Young, we've seen enough to know. You know what I mean? So it's probably more of a known. But yeah, I really think that both those guys limit for both those guys. Notre Dame hasn't had, if Dunham commits. They haven't had a guy that just has that kind of for a while. I think that they've had some guys that, like a Julian Aquara had that kind, but he came in at 210 pounds, where Dunham's going to come in more readily made and somebody can play a little bit early. But I'm really excited about both those guys, especially if Dunham commits. What's your thoughts there?
I mean, both those guys, the ceiling for them is high first round pick. That's what it is. And I would say that you've seen the floor for Bryce Young. That was the floor last year. And he blocked 3 kicks and he, showed plenty of flashes of man, this guy's got a chance to be awesome. And you see the motor and all that.
Big sack in a huge game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Towards the end of the game. That was a huge sack. It was huge.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to be, and he you know what, he played well in that Georgia game too. And I think that he's someone who could take a huge jump this year. But I think if I'm looking at Dunham, I think he has a chance he's going to be better. He's certainly way better as a junior than Bryce Young was as a junior. And I think he will be better as a freshman than Bryce Young was as a freshman. He just more complete at that point. Yeah. But the ceiling, it's the same. They could be top 10 NFL picks. That is, it's a possibility for both those guys. That's how physically freakishly talented those guys are.
Do you think Bryce Young eventually moves into 3-tech at the end? I mean, he's just continues to grow.
I mean, I think there's a chance, but he just runs so well. And I mean, I think there's a chance if he gets up to 290, then I think that'll probably happen. I mean, certainly he's at 270 pounds now. he's and he's looks like he can still carry quite a bit more. So it's it's on the table.
First off the bus guy.
Yeah, but he's certainly athletically he can play edge because what he can do in terms of like just laterally what he can do, and his motor is just outstanding.
You'd hate to lose that length inside too, or outside. He's just got such great length and ability to bend for his size, which is rare. I did see somebody post in here about Keeley was supposed to be dominant right away. If anybody knows, I was not a Keeley fan.
I don't think any of us thought that he was supposed to be dominant. I think
he had a body to be that, but he just did not play hard. He just didn't play hard.
The ceiling was high.
I was not a fan. Yeah. I just was not a fan. And I think it's turned out to show so far. Now that doesn't mean he won't turn into. He's always got the ability to do it. It's just whether he wants to do it or not. All right. Do you think if Lambert and Juggersaw played next to each other during the season, they could form a very dominant side to run on? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I will say, if Gerby starts, there's going to be a learning curve, just like there is for everybody. So I don't think people expect him to come in and just dominate right away. It just doesn't work that way. No matter how talented you are, there's a learning curve. So, you want to put him out at left tackle. Yeah, that's fine. But he's not going to play probably as well as Knapp would right away. I doubt it very much. Knapp is a very solid player. So put him at left tackle. Will he develop and be that kind of player? I don't know. One thing I will say, 330 pounds, and he's going to get even bigger. Can he stay athletic enough to play left tackle? That's the thing you don't understand. You don't know, because that's a big dude already, and he's going to get even bigger. So, I don't think ideally, unless they move like Ronnie Stanley, you don't want somebody that's 350 pounds out there. So maybe it is best that he stays at right tackle or maybe even moves to guard. But he's just a massive dude. And no matter what, he's going to be a very good player. I'll be shocked if he's not, but it's going to take some time. It's definitely going to take some time. All right. Do you expect us to go for anybody in the April portal opening? If so, what positions are you hearing? I'd be surprised. I think they're pretty solid. I haven't heard anything. What do you think, Yama? Could you pick a place?
I don't think they'll go unless there's injuries that happen during spring that kind of force their hand somewhere. I just don't really see it based on kind of where things are at with the roster right now. I mean, someone could always pop up into it. So David Bailey, who popped in from Stanford.
Yeah.
And I know there's automatically people are like, go after him. Like, this is, they should go. He's a Stanford guy. He's going to go to SC, whatever. David Bailey is a very good pass rusher. Very, very good pass rusher. Got a lot of great traits. He's bad versus the run. He's a sub package player for Stanford, not Notre Dame, sub package for Stanford. They would take him out against heavy running teams. Last year he lost his starting job because he was not the previous year, 2023. He lost his starting job because he wasn't a good player versus a run. And he's very good pass rusher, but he's played significantly more snaps against the pass because they use him in that way. They protect him in that way. And if you're just looking at where Notre Dame is at and the fact that he could, come in and he would be a good player, he would help the team for sure. But then all of a sudden you're just like, okay, well, that means we're pushing out Botello or Traore or Bryce Young or Burnham or Tui Alamaka, all these guys. You're pushing one of those guys out for him, and I gotta be honest, he wouldn't start at Notre Dame. He would start on third downs, yes, he would, but he wouldn't be a regular starter at Notre Dame. So he even if he goes to SC, he might not start at SC. That's not 100%. So I don't know. there could be somebody who's like just the perfect fit and the perfect person to add. If that happens, sure. But because I know there are people who are saying, well, they should get another defensive tackle. Not unless they hate the defensive tackles that they have now, because
I agree. Yeah.
They look how many bodies they have that can play now, especially that Onye's back, right? So right now they almost have too many bodies at defensive tackle competing for time. So I just, it's got to be the right person and the right kind of fit that you would think that isn't going to also like mess up with like the kind of culture that you're building and screw, like, because people will get, upset about it if you're just bringing somebody in to kind of replace somebody, especially if like, somebody they're replacing is already good.
Well, here's the thing. In April, you're probably going to see maybe, and I'm going to say maybe, and probably not position by position, but maybe one player at each position that goes into the portal that would be even worth considering. Maybe, when you consider the type of talent that Notre Dame has. And then is Notre Dame going to pay up for that guy? Because if he's the only guy that's at this level and somebody else needs him, they're going to pay a lot for him. And Notre Dame's really not in a position where there's a lot of guys that they absolutely need at this point. So it would have to be, I think, somebody who you just can't pass on. And there may be in the opening, maybe two players that I would consider that type of level and then again, you got to pay them. So, when you're trying to get recruits and you're trying to keep the guys that you have on your roster and you're trying to do all the things you have to do, you got to be careful about how much you pay for some of these guys. And so, are you going to give, Kedron Young less money to take somebody like this when you want to keep Kedron Young around? These are the things that you have to think about when these opportunities arise. So I do want to say, I just want to mention, we do have the Sausage King of Chicago here in chat. So I don't know if you see that, but Abe Froman, yes. He's the Sausage King of Chicago. Sorry, I just saw that. I had to laugh. It was a great name. All right. All right, we got some more questions here. People have been asking this, and I still haven't done it, Jamie, because I've been so busy watching like the 2026 guys. I just don't know what to – and Notre Dame hasn't been specific either about who they really like at quarterback. Somebody wanted us to rank the 2027 quarterbacks. I mean, I just haven't watched enough of it to know. I really haven't.
I mean, someone asked last week about it too, and I said, ask us again in May.
Yeah.
Because obviously spring will be done. A lot of these 2026 visits will be done. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. It's like I just haven't dived into all those 2027 quarterbacks, that heavily yet. So I don't want to just give like an opinion on something that I like. I haven't watched enough guys to say. So ask again at that time. All right, would be my suggestion.
All right, if you could place a magical protective shield around any one Notre Dame football player to prevent injury for next year, who would it be? And he listed a name. I don't want to say the name because I don't want to influence your decision there, Jamie, although you probably already read it. And I will get Greg too. I'll give you my thoughts. Go ahead.
I mean, I did read it, and but I would have to agree that he said Leonard Moore, and I think I would agree with that because he was just, I can't even think of, if you think about it, when he stepped in for Ben Morrison last year, he was might have been from the point at that point on, might have been the most valuable player on the team.
Yeah.
Like that's how good he was. And that's how good he was. And that's how important he was. So, I mean, there's a lot of great players that you would never want to lose. But I truly think like he should be, I don't know how they, who knows, whatever, with preseason All-Americans and all that kind of stuff. He should be on a bunch of these lists. He should be.
I doubt he will be, but he should be. You're 100% right. I think he's one of the best corners in the country, and I think he proved that last year. And I think he's a tremendous talent, and I would have a hard time not saying him as well. I'd say, obviously, I think Charles is another guy I'd add in there. Jugasaw, I just think I don't think people realize how good he's going to be this year. I cannot wait to watch it, and I think he's going to be a big reason why Notre Dame runs and hopefully Jeremiah Love wins the Heisman. That's what I'm hoping for. But and of course you don't want to lose Jeremiah, but you have other people that you can plug in. Same thing at offensive line. At corner, the depth's just very thin. It just is. I mean, you got Cree Thomas right now, and there's and Carson Hobbs. That's about it. I guess Devontae Smith is also there, but you're hoping more. He's playing nickel, and so again, I think it's got to be him. Greg, you got any thoughts on this?
I can't go not Jeremiah Love on this. I think he could be, like you said, he could win the Heisman. I just want to see it, to be honest. Like, I think the fact that Notre Dame has a talent like this, he could be the best player in college football, the most exciting player in college football. Like, he could be in for like an all-timer Notre Dame season, and I just want to see it. That's what I want to see. Offense, defense.
He's the best back I've ever seen at Notre Dame.
Running back, wide receiver. Like, it could truly, like, it's very rare that you actually get to. There's the potential for something, and it's very rare for that potential to actually get realized. And I desperately want to see that, because I think he could just be an all-timer for, like, not just at Notre Dame, but like in the sport period. I think he has that kind of talent. So that's for me. That's what it is. I can't disagree with like Leonard Moore, because he's vitally important to the team, right? Like, I think if something did happen, Jeremiah Love, like Jadarian Price is good, and Aeneas Williams is good. And I think, if Jabron Payne's still around, Kedron Young, like, they can run the ball still, like, really well.
Yeah.
But I just want to see it from Jeremiah Love.
I think, first of all, I think you can't argue against anything that Greg said. And it's also a reminder that Notre Dame went on their run. Obviously, they got the 98-yard touchdown from him in against Indiana, but he was never healthy at all during the playoffs.
Yeah.
If he was, that could have been something that might have been the difference between them winning. That, honestly, that's how talented he is. Because I would say in that first half against USC, and I know USC wasn't the greatest or whatever, but I'm just saying, like, just what he did in that first half against USC, that was shaping up to be an all-time performance. That was special. And he is special.
Best back I've ever seen at Notre Dame. He just is. And I know some people bring up some of the Holtz backs, but they're just not. They're not that good. And I guarantee if you ask those Holtz backs, they'd tell you that too. They'd tell you this guy's just better, because he can do everything. He can run with power. He can make you miss. He's got great ability in the open field. His stiff arm is devastating. He can jump. He can do anything. Catch the ball is really the only thing we haven't seen enough of. Hopefully we'll see more of it. And I think he's a tremendous player, no question. All right. Sorry if I answered this thread somewhere. Not a lot of time to surf the board lately, but any update on Joey O'Brien's recruitment? Again, I think Notre Dame feels like they're in great shape for him. Whether or not that's true or not, we'll see. But I do think that Notre Dame's got a real good chance to get him. Jamie, I love this guy. I love Joey O'Brien. I love him. I mean, I think he's one of the top players in the entire country. I really hope they land him, because he can do so many things. He could be a tremendous wide receiver. Really could be. Just really could be a dominant wide receiver. But when you look at safety, what he can do, how much he can cover, he's just a fast guy. I think he's a hell of an athlete. He's exactly what you're looking for. I love him. Thoughts with him?
Yeah, and he's got corner skills too. Like he can legit play man coverage. He would be an absolute massive get. And I think, and kind of tying it into like where they're at with recruiting right now. I think the one thing that has been very encouraging for this staff is, obviously there was like the delay and there, a lot of stuff behind the scenes was getting changed and all that during that time in recruiting. And then there was a lull and people are wondering like kind of, oh, they didn't really get the big, lift from going to the national championship game. I think based on how the people they're getting on campus now, the response from these people once they get to campus, I think you are seeing that big boost from it. And I think it is really kind of paying off. And hopefully it pays off with a guy like O'Brien. Because I think if you look at it, there was a lot of people that said like, well, it's going to be the same old kind of recruiting year as well. Just kind of where they're standing right now. And obviously they got a big week coming up with visits too. If they do well in these next couple of weeks with some of these guys kind of leading into it, I mean, this does have a chance to be like a far better class than anyone that I think Freeman has signed, and he signed a couple of pretty darn good ones. So I think that's exciting.
Closing, right? We've been in this position where we feel like we're in great shape before, and they just didn't close. But I just have a feeling it just feels different. It just kind of feels different. I hope I'm right. We won't know until the closing happens, but I just feel like they're in a pretty good position right now. And I think the changes that they've made in the recruiting department are going to be positive. I think a lot of people were concerned about how things were going. I totally understand why. You're sitting there getting a little nervous because you're losing guys. You're going to lose guys on the list anyway. That's going to happen, but you got to start closing on some yourself. And I think we're going to start seeing that. And I'm excited about it because if they can land the majority of the guys I feel like they got a good shot at, this is going to be a heck of a class. It's going to be a lot of fun. It really is. Still a little worried about wide receiver. I just am. I think you add Finley to the group. If you can get him, who just recently visited, pretty good. But I still like to get two more guys, and you need a big body. You just need a big body. It's important to get a boundary that can stretch the field. And there's just not a lot of those names on the target list right now. So that's the only thing that's kind of a little bit concerning. And I do think a left tackle, or not a left tackle, but just any tackle would be very, very good. We know, Matt put out a good intel piece on recruiting. I think that things are starting to look a little bit more positive with, Keenan Ogboko. I think he's a really talented player. You could add him. That'd be great. We'll see whether even, how much, what the situation is with Ojo. I love him, but, will they be in that race? I don't know. We'll see. But that's kind of, I think they're in good shape. So if there's any questions from the chat, there's a lot of you in here. If there's any questions, feel free to ask them. We got a little bit of time, so we'll be answering them. We got one more question here. Guy wants to know if Steve, or I'm sorry, if CJ Carr comes out as our number one guy after spring, what are the chances Steve stays? What are the chances Minchie stays? I'll be surprised if that happens, that they announce anybody as the number one guy or the starter. I'd be very surprised if that happens. But if it does, I got to figure Minchie would be gone. I just really do. I don't see, he wants to go play. Steve may stick around because he's only an injury away, and we'll see what happens. But he's not going to start right away. If Steve went somewhere, I doubt he could just go in and take a starting position right away. Maybe if somebody really needed a quarterback, he could do that, or was guaranteed. And I'm sure there's probably some schools that would say that. But you also want to make sure you're in the right position if you're Steve. You can't just go out and take a flyer on a place. You got to make sure they got a good line, a good offensive system, also some receivers and that type of thing. You can't just go and take the first starting position. So that's kind of what I would say. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
I just don't see any way that scenario would happen where they would just be like, your CJ Carr's the guy at the end of spring. First of all, I don't think they're going to say anyone is the guy at the end of spring.
Yep.
I just think it's not in their best interest to do that. And also, it's probably not fair enough to the guys because, there are these people who are out and missing from the spring. All of a sudden, you get in the fall camp, everybody's there. You get like a full look at everything. The only way that would ever happen is CJ Carr would have to be so much better than the other two that it wouldn't. And I just don't think that's going to happen.
Be the case.
I don't think that's going to happen. So I just think, they're going to play it out. And, I wouldn't be surprised if all three are still there in the summer at the very least, because I just think that it'll be tough to really like kind of distinguish. Because if you're telling Minchie that he still has a chance at the job, like why would he leave? I just don't see it.
Greg, can you put up Coach Hump's question there? Basically wants to know, do you think either if they have any more injuries at key positions, if that means that we'll see, Steve would be more likely to be the starter? It's an interesting question. If all of a sudden, Notre Dame had some big injuries to some key players, does it mean, Steve would be more likely? It's an interesting question to consider. Your thoughts, Jamie?
I don't know about that because I can't really think of anyone that would kind of force them into that. Because like, who would it be that would make you think that like Angeli would be that, it would be that much safer to play him based on who got hurt. So I don't know which injuries would be. It is an interesting question, but I just don't see anyone that who those injuries would be that would force them to make that specific decision. Because I think there's certain things that you could look at where, like last year, one of the reasons that they wanted to get Leonard because it was like, well, we're gonna have a young O-line, we're gonna go into Texas A&M at the beginning, and all that. Like, I just think they're gonna be, no matter what they're coming into the season, even if they have, injuries and whatnot, whether or not Angeli starts early, some of it will be based on, how they feel that person is the quarterback is going to handle playing in Miami, right? In that first game. So I think that's, Coach Hump said is that if the O-line is decimated, well, we kind of already talked about, like, they're going to have 3 major injuries in camp.
Yeah,
they'd have to. First of all, that's extremely unlikely. But even then, if they did that, I still feel like I still feel like they'd have a pretty good starting 5. I think they're going to have a pretty good 8 guys, maybe 9. Yeah. So I don't know. That's why I don't really see it.
Guy asked if we think that they're going to finish top 5 in recruiting. It's possible. Yeah, I think so much of it's going to depend here on the next probably month and a half. Can you get some guys in fold here that, maybe if you could get a couple guys in fold before they take their official visits, I think that'll help. I'm sure Notre Dame's trying to do that, but we'll see what happens. But, I don't know. I would, I just think it's too early to say because we just don't know how we don't know how they're going to, close yet. I think that they're setting up to look pretty good, but until we see how they close and we've seen countless times that kids go on visits somewhere else and you may think you lead and then all of a sudden it just switches just like that. That's happened to Notre Dame countless times. So other teams are good recruiters too. Other teams have opportunities. Other teams may have more NIL money, so that all that's going to take, it's all going to factor into it. So until guys are ready to kind of make a decision, I think it's really hard to make any sort of judgment on that at this point. But I think it could, the way things are trending right now, it certainly could.
Yeah, I think there's certainly an outside chance that they could. Probably more likely top 10. But I will say, like, if you look at, like, which is also too why, looking at the recruiting rankings right now is kind of, useless, because you really don't, like, Notre Dame. I look at 247, they're 16th right now. And just, they have the thing where you do the class calculator, you plug in the guys. And if you plugged in Dunham, Tiki Hola, and Javian Osborne, I would say they lead for all those guys right now, or at the very least with Hola, they're right there, right? So,
Yeah.
if you just add those three guys, they go from 16th to 4th, just for three guys. So, and obviously other people are going to add too, but it just kind of shows, if you look at kind of like who they're in on right now, unless they kind of strike out on a bunch of these guys, the guys that they're kind of like in contenders with it based on who they've got, like, they're just going to keep climbing, and it'll just kind of, be what it is. Because like USC is number 1 ranked right now in the thing. Good for them. Well, they have 16 commits, and 6 of the guys are 3-star. I mean, obviously they have a good class. I'm not saying they don't have a good class, but it's like people are going to catch up to them, as it goes along.
And we'll see. It don't matter where you're at now. It matters where you close.
Exactly.
And that's really what it boils down to. And I think Notre Dame's in a good position. Just a matter of, can you continue to close and get the guys that you want? And I'll say this, Jamie. I've watched everybody they're in on now, all the 2026 guys. If they land kind of the guys that kind of are trending that way, I don't care where they're ranked. I really don't care. I like the guys. You know what I mean? I really like the guys. I whether they're the number 10 running back or the number 16 running back or whatever, I don't care. They're getting the right guys. If they get the guys that they're focused on, and I feel like they have a legit shot at, I'll be very happy. I don't care where it ranks, because I'm, these recruiting rankings, I think, are a joke. And I've said this for, I like the guys. I really think the guys that they're after are very good, and will be a huge addition. I mean, you look at Bonner. I think Bonner's a tremendous running back. I really do.
Yeah.
He's a really good player, and hopefully they can get him. I love him. I love Osborne. Land those two, man. That's impressive. You land an O'Brien. You land, maybe a Kari Adams. Who again, I think that they're kind of right there in on a Jordan Thomas, who they're kind of right there in on. Obviously we feel pretty good about Tiki Hola. That'd be awesome. There's a lot of guys at defensive end that they're really in on. Mikael Blade, obviously Dunham, Ebenezer, Elijah Golden's still kind of there. Griffin Haynes, there's a lot of guys there that if you can add these guys, it's going to be, I think, a way better class than last year. And I like them. I think it's an impressive class if they can land these guys, but got to get them.
Yeah. Well, I would say Dre Quinn is a perfect example, because I think he's way better than his ranking. I really like him. I really like him. And he's obviously got, a visit coming up, and then he's got his official already planned too. So that's a perfect example of a guy that maybe, like, people will look at his ranking when they think, and maybe not that be excited about. Go watch his huddle and you'll be excited about him.
Yeah. They're in really good shape with a lot of these guys. So I'm excited about it. All right, folks, that's going to be it. I wanted to mention, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. Make sure you subscribe and like our videos. If you want to watch Power Hour, you can always search for us on Irish Sports Daily on YouTube. But we greatly appreciate you liking the channel and also subscribing to the channel. And then if you would, share the content. Share it with your Notre Dame friends. It greatly helps us and helps our channel grow. So we'd greatly appreciate that. Thanks for listening once again this week. Yama will be there. Hopefully they'll have the Saturday scrimmage and get a good look at what we see there. Can't wait. I'm just so excited. I really am. And then you think about it, Jamie. I was looking today, and you think about the freshmen. So many of the top freshmen, Will Black, Flanagan, Dallas Golden, Burgess, Saka, Zachary, Hulock. I mean, those guys really aren't even there yet. I really like Koikia. I think he could be a really good player. I love Brandon Logan. I love his potential. These guys aren't even on campus yet. So I can't wait to see what they can do as well next fall. But I'm really excited about where things are right now. I really am. And I think Notre Dame is committed to being a very good football team. And I think that is going to help Marcus Freeman so much moving forward. I love the fact that I feel like Notre Dame is 100% in on this. And, for so many years, I didn't feel that way, but I really feel that way now. So excited about it. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you guys soon next week on Power Hour.